Here's what makes this moment different from every other time you've thought about changing your life. Right now, as you listen to these words, your brain is firing in the exact same patterns it fired yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. You are literally hardwired to be yourself, and that's exactly the problem. Dr. Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is a scientifically grounded roadmap for rewiring your brain and reconditioning your body to create an entirely new version of you. Dispenza combines cutting-edge neuroscience, quantum physics, and practical meditation techniques to show you something extraordinary. You can change your brain and body by thought alone, without changing anything in your physical environment. Think about that for a moment. What if the reason you keep experiencing the same problems, the same relationships, the same limitations isn't bad luck or circumstances beyond your control? What if you're simply addicted to being yourself, to the familiar thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that keep recreating the same reality over and over again? This book reveals why 95% of who you are by age 35 is a set of memorized behaviors and emotional reactions running on autopilot. You're not truly living, you're unconsciously repeating the past. In this audiobook, you'll learn a precise, step-by-step meditation process to break free from your old self and consciously create a new one. So let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1. The Quantum You. For most of human history, we've been told a comforting lie, that our minds and the physical world are completely separate things. Your thoughts happen in here, reality happens out there, and never the twain shall meet. It's a clean division that makes intuitive sense. After all, you can't think a sandwich into existence or wish away a rainstorm, right? But what if you knew that this separation between mind and matter is one of the biggest illusions we've ever believed? And what if breaking free from this illusion is the key to changing your entire life? Let's start with something that might blow your mind. You know that solid table in front of you, or the chair you're sitting on, or even your own body? None of it is actually solid. At the subatomic level, everything you think of as matter is 99.99999% empty space. An atom, the building block of everything physical, is almost entirely nothing. If you could see reality at its most fundamental level, you'd discover that what appears solid is actually mostly energy, vibrating at different frequencies. This isn't mystical talk, this is established quantum physics, and it changes everything. In the early 20th century, scientists studying these tiny subatomic particles discovered something absolutely bizarre. These particles don't behave like solid little balls of matter. Instead, they exist as waves of probability, pure potential, until someone observes them. The moment a scientist looks for an electron, it appears. But before that observation, it exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, as a field of infinite possibilities. This phenomenon is called the observer effect, and it reveals something profound. Your conscious attention actually affects physical reality. Where you place your awareness, where you focus your mind, has a measurable impact on the material world. Now, you might be thinking, sure, but that's just tiny particles in a lab. What does that have to do with my life? Everything, because you, me, your problems, your dreams, your body, your circumstances, all of it is made of these same quantum particles. And if observation affects how particles behave, then your thoughts and attention are constantly influencing the reality you experience. Think about this for a moment. In the quantum field, which is the invisible web of energy that makes up everything, all possible versions of your life already exist. There's a version where you're healthy, wealthy, and fulfilled. There's a version where you're stuck in the same patterns. These aren't fantasies. They're actual probabilities existing in the quantum field, waiting to be observed into reality. So here's the revolutionary question. Can you learn to observe the reality you want into existence? The answer is yes, but there's a catch. You can't just think positive thoughts while feeling negative emotions and expect anything to change. Dispenza explains this brilliantly through a study done at the HeartMath Research Center. Researchers had people hold vials of DNA and try to change the DNA through their intentions. One group just held positive emotions, like love and appreciation. Nothing happened. Another group held clear intentions to change the DNA, but without emotion. Again, nothing happened. But the third group, they combined both clear intention with elevated emotion, and they changed the DNA by up to 25% in just 2 minutes. Mind and body working together, thought and feeling aligned, created measurable physical change. This is the key insight. The quantum field doesn't respond to your wishes or your thoughts alone. It responds to your state of being, when your thoughts and feelings are broadcasting the same coherent signal. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine your thoughts are like the electrical charge in the quantum field, and your feelings are like the magnetic charge. Together they create an electromagnetic signature that you're constantly broadcasting into the invisible field of energy around you. Every potential experience that could happen in your life also has its own electromagnetic signature. When your signature matches one of those potentials through both thought and feeling, you draw that reality toward you, or it draws you toward it. This is why so many people struggle with manifestation or the law of attraction. They think about wealth while feeling poor. They visualize love while feeling unworthy. The mind says one thing, the body feels another, and the quantum field receives a mixed, incoherent signal. Nothing manifests because there's no clear instruction. If you can create a new state of being, actually changing how you think and feel, you can change your electromagnetic signature. And when you do that, you align with a different potential reality in the quantum field. Now let me address the skeptic in your head, because I know it's there. You might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. If it's this simple, why isn't everyone doing it? And that's the perfect question, because it brings us to the real challenge. The problem is that most of us are stuck in a loop. We wake up, feel the same emotions we felt yesterday, think the same thoughts based on those feelings, make the same choices, and create the same experiences. Then those experiences generate the same emotions, which trigger the same thoughts, and round we go. We're using the same mind to try to create a different life, and it's not working because we're still the same person, broadcasting the same signal. To create a new life, you must become a new person. Your personality, how you think, act, and feel, creates your personal reality. If you keep the same personality, you'll keep the same reality. It's really that simple and that challenging. The beautiful thing about quantum physics is that it frees you from the old Newtonian model of cause and effect. You don't have to wait for something outside of you to change before you can feel better. You don't need a new job to feel fulfilled, or a relationship to feel loved, or money in the bank to feel abundant. In fact, trying to get those things from that state of lack is exactly backward. Instead, you can generate the feeling first, independent of any external circumstance. You can feel grateful before you have a reason. You can feel wealthy before the money arrives. You can feel loved before the relationship appears. And when you do this authentically, when your body actually feels it, you're signaling the quantum field that the event has already occurred. You're living in the future reality now, and the field must respond by reorganizing your external world to match your internal state. This is what Dispenza means when he talks about making thought more real than anything else. When you're truly focused on a thought, when you're emotionally engaged with a vision of your future, your brain doesn't know the difference between what's happening in your mind and what's happening in the external world. It starts firing and wiring new neural networks as if the imagined experience has already happened. Let me give you a practical understanding of this. Remember the last time you had a really vivid worry about something bad happening? Maybe you imagined a difficult conversation or a worst-case scenario. Your heart probably started racing, your palms might have gotten sweaty, your stomach tightened up. Your body responded as if the imagined event was actually happening, even though nothing in your external reality had changed. That's your body responding to thought alone. Now, what if you could harness that same power for positive creation? What if you could imagine a desired outcome so vividly, with such emotional intensity, that your body responds as if it's already happened? That's exactly what changes your electromagnetic signature and aligns you with a new potential reality. You can't try to control how or when your desired reality manifests. The moment you start obsessing about the details, when will it happen, where, with whom, exactly how, you've gone back to the old Newtonian model of cause and effect. You're trying to force an outcome which comes from a place of lack and doubt. Instead, your job is to get crystal clear on what you want. Emotionally embody the feeling of already having it, and then surrender the details to a greater intelligence. This isn't blind faith or magical thinking. It's understanding that the quantum field contains more information and possibilities than your conscious mind can conceive. There's an organizing intelligence at work that can orchestrate events in ways you never could have planned. This intelligence has many names: universal consciousness, the quantum field, infinite mind. You can call it God, Source, or whatever resonates with you. The important thing is recognizing that there's an intelligence underlying all of reality, and it's not separate from you. You're an expression of it, an extension of it. And when your will aligns with its will, when your love of life matches its love for you, it responds. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in this entire book: the idea that you're more energy than matter, more consciousness than body. Remember that statistic about atoms being 99.999% empty space? That means you're fundamentally made of energy and information, not solid stuff. And energy can be influenced by consciousness. Most of us have been taught to focus almost exclusively on the 0.0000001% of reality that's physical. We obsess over our bodies, our possessions, other people, and circumstances. We're trying to change our lives by rearranging the furniture of the material world. But what if you could change things at the level of energy first, at the quantum level where all possibilities exist? Then the material world would have to reorganize itself to reflect those changes. This is why to change any aspect of your life, your health, relationships, finances, or circumstances, you must transcend the big three: your environment, your body, and time. You must become no body, no thing, no time. When you meditate and truly let go of your awareness of your physical body, your external environment, and the progression of time, you enter the quantum field. And that's where you have access to all potentials, all possibilities. Think of it this way: as long as you're identified with your physical body, you're limited by its history, its conditioning, its habits. As long as you're focused on your environment, you're trapped by what already exists. As long as you're bound by linear time, you're a prisoner of your past. But when you temporarily release all three, you become pure consciousness, and pure consciousness can access any version of reality. Now, I know this might sound abstract, so let me bring it back to something concrete. Have you ever had an experience where you were so absorbed in something creative, writing, painting, playing music, solving a problem, that you completely lost track of time? Where hours passed like minutes, where you forgot about your body, forgot about your surroundings, and felt completely in the zone. In those moments, you transcended the big three, and you touched the creative state where real change is possible. Learn to enter that state deliberately, not just by accident when you happen to be inspired, but as a skill you can cultivate, because when you can consistently access that state, you can start consciously creating the life you want, rather than unconsciously recreating the life you've always had. The greatest individuals in history, Gandhi, Joan of Arc, Martin Luther King Jr., all had one thing in common. They held a vision of a future reality so powerfully in their minds that they lived as if it already existed, even when everything in their external environment contradicted it. They didn't need to see it with their eyes to believe it. They believed it in their hearts and minds so completely that they couldn't live any other way. And here's the thing: they weren't special. They didn't have abilities you don't have. They simply understood, consciously or unconsciously, how to use the quantum nature of reality. They made thought more real than circumstance. They generated feelings independent of external conditions. They became living examples of a future that hadn't yet manifested, and through the coherence of their thoughts and emotions, they collapsed quantum probabilities into physical reality. You have that same power. Your brain has the same capabilities. Your consciousness has the same connection to the quantum field. The only question is, will you use it? Will you break free from the habit of thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and creating the same reality? Will you dare to become someone new? Because here's what quantum physics is really telling us: the life you want already exists as a probability in the field. The healed version of you, the successful version, the joyful version, they're all there, waiting, not in some distant future, but right now in this eternal present moment, coexisting with the version of you that's listening to these words. The only thing standing between you and that reality is your willingness to change your state of being, to think new thoughts, feel new emotions, and hold that new state so consistently that your electromagnetic signature shifts to match the life you're calling in. That's the quantum you, but first you had to understand this fundamental truth. You are not a powerless observer in a predetermined universe. You are a quantum creator, and your thoughts, emotions, and awareness are actively shaping your reality every single moment. So as we move forward, carry this question with you. If your thoughts and feelings are constantly creating your reality, what reality are you creating right now? And more importantly, what reality do you want to create instead? Chapter 2. Overcoming your environment. The problem most people face is that they're not consciously choosing that electromagnetic signature. Instead, their environment is choosing it for them. Let me paint you a picture of what that means. You wake up tomorrow morning, and what's the first thing that happens? Your alarm goes off. That's an environmental cue. You open your eyes and see your bedroom, the same bedroom you've seen every morning for years. You feel the familiar weight of your body in bed, the same aches or tensions you felt yesterday. You smell coffee brewing or hear the sounds of your neighborhood waking up. Within seconds, dozens of sensory inputs from your environment are flooding your brain. And here's what happens next, without you even realizing it. Your brain starts firing in the same neural patterns it fired yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. Why? Because your brain is designed to respond to your environment. It's literally wired to reflect everything you know. All the people, places, things, experiences, and memories that make up your familiar world. Your brain is essentially a record of your past. Every experience you've had, every person you've met, every place you've been, everything you own, it's all mapped out in the neural networks of your brain. And when you wake up each morning and plug into your familiar environment through your senses, you automatically activate those old networks. You start thinking the same thoughts, which trigger the same chemical reactions, which produce the same feelings, which drive the same behaviors, which create the same experiences, which reinforce the same thoughts. It's a closed loop. Your environment is controlling your mind. The external world is literally determining your internal state. And if your thoughts create your reality, but your environment is controlling your thoughts, then your environment is creating your reality. You've given away your power without even knowing it. Let me give you a concrete example. Think about someone in your life who always seems to push your buttons. Maybe it's a coworker, a family member, or an ex-partner. Now, what happens the moment you see them? Before they even say a word, your body starts to react. Your heart rate changes, your muscles tense, certain emotions bubble up. Why? Because your brain has associated that person with past experiences, and the moment you perceive them, your brain fires the networks connected to those memories. Your body starts producing the same chemicals it produced during those past interactions. Within seconds, you're feeling exactly the way you used to feel, thinking the same kinds of thoughts, and probably about to behave in the same predictable way. That's not free will, that's not conscious choice. That's being controlled by your environment through associative memory. You're on autopilot, running an old program, being the same person you've always been in that situation. And here's the really challenging part. This isn't just happening with difficult people. It's happening with everything in your environment. Your house keeps reminding you to be the same person. Your car reminds you to be the same person. Your job, your routine, your neighborhood, even your favorite coffee shop, all of these external elements are environmental cues that trigger the same neural networks, the same chemistry, the same version of you. You might go to a workshop or read an inspiring book and feel motivated to transform your life. But then you go home to the same environment, see the same people, do the same things, and within days or even hours, you're back to being your old self. The environment is too powerful. It's like trying to plant a new garden in old soil that's filled with the roots and seeds of everything you grew before. Now you might be thinking, well, I can't just abandon my life and move to a monastery to change. And you're right, the solution isn't necessarily to change your external environment, though sometimes that helps. The solution is to become greater than your environment. To stop letting the outer world control your inner world. To think and feel independent of the conditions in your life. This is where the concept of mental rehearsal becomes crucial. Remember those studies Dispenza mentions about piano players? Researchers had one group physically practice piano exercises for 2 hours a day. Another group just mentally rehearsed the same exercises. They never touched a piano. After 5 days, brain scans showed that both groups had grown almost identical new neural networks. The people who only imagined playing piano changed their brains nearly as much as those who actually played. Think about what this means. It means your brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and one you imagine vividly enough. If you can mentally rehearse being a new version of yourself, thinking new thoughts, making new choices, feeling new emotions, your brain will start wiring itself as if you've already had those experiences. You're literally installing the hardware for a new personality before you step into your environment to demonstrate it. This is how you become greater than your environment. You don't wait for your circumstances to change before you change. You change yourself first, internally, through the power of focused thought and emotion. Then you bring that new self into your environment, and because you've already wired the circuits for new responses, you're not automatically triggered by the old cues. Let me give you a practical way to understand this. Imagine you typically feel anxious and reactive at work. Every time your boss walks into the room, your stomach tightens. Your mind starts racing with worried thoughts, and you brace yourself for criticism. That's your environment controlling you. But what if, before going to work, you spent time mentally rehearsing a different response? You close your eyes and imagine your boss walking in. But instead of anxiety, you feel calm and centered. You see yourself speaking confidently, maintaining your composure, responding thoughtfully rather than reactively. If you do this enough times, vividly enough, with enough emotional engagement, you're teaching your brain a new pattern. You're firing and wiring new networks that represent this new way of being. Then when your boss actually walks in, those new networks are available to you. You have a choice you didn't have before. You're not completely at the mercy of your old conditioning. This is what Dispenza means by making thought more real than anything else. You're using the power of your imagination and intention to create an internal experience that's so vivid, your brain treats it as real. And because your brain can't distinguish between a real experience and an intensely imagined one, you actually change your neurology without changing anything in your physical environment first. Now here's something really important to understand. You're hardwiring yourself to your environment. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time you think the same thoughts in response to your environment, every time you feel the same emotions when you see the same people or do the same things, you're strengthening those neural connections. You're literally hardwiring your personality to your circumstances. And here's the challenging part. You can hardwire yourself to good circumstances or bad circumstances. If your life is difficult and you keep thinking and feeling in the same ways in response to those difficulties, you're hardwiring yourself to hardship. Your brain becomes a map of your problems. The neural networks that represent your challenges become so strong, so automatic, that you can't think outside of them anymore. This is why some people seem stuck in patterns that make no logical sense. Why does someone keep choosing partners who treat them badly? Why does someone keep sabotaging opportunities for success? It's not because they consciously want those outcomes. It's because their brain has become hardwired to those patterns through repetition. The familiar networks are so strong that they automatically fire, even when the person consciously wants something different. But here's the empowering flip side. If neurons that fire together wire together, then neurons that no longer fire together no longer wire together. When you stop activating the old networks, when you stop thinking the same thoughts and feeling the same feelings in response to your environment, those connections begin to weaken. You start pruning away the old you, and simultaneously, as you mentally rehearse new ways of being, you're sprouting new networks. You're rewiring yourself. Think about Gandhi. The external environment of colonial India was brutal, oppressive, degrading. Every single thing in his outer world was sending signals that Indians were inferior, powerless, subjugated. For most people in that situation, those environmental cues would completely control their internal state. They would feel powerless because their environment reflected powerlessness. But Gandhi did something extraordinary. He held a vision in his mind of a free India that was so real to him, so emotionally compelling, that he lived as if it already existed. He didn't let the outer environment determine his inner state. He was greater than his environment. And because he maintained that internal coherence, that alignment of thought and feeling around freedom and dignity, he eventually helped change the external environment to match his internal vision. You might think, well, I'm not Gandhi, I'm just trying to change my own life, not free a country. But the principle is exactly the same. Whether you're trying to overcome an addiction, heal a disease, create abundance, or find love, you cannot do it by thinking and feeling equal to your current circumstances. Your present conditions are the result of your past thoughts, feelings, and actions. If you want a different future, you must become someone else now, before the evidence shows up in your environment. This is one of the most challenging concepts for people to grasp because it goes against everything we've been taught. We've been conditioned to believe that we'll be happy when we get the new job, when we find the relationship, when we have enough money, when we lose the weight. We're waiting for the environment to change so we can feel different. But that's backwards. The quantum model says you must feel different first. You must change your internal state, and then the environment will reorganize to match it. Let me give you another way to think about this. Your environment is essentially a mirror reflecting back who you've been. Everything in your life right now, your relationships, your bank account, your health, your circumstances, is the result of how you've been thinking, feeling, and acting up until this moment. If you keep being the same person, the mirror will keep showing you the same reflection. But if you change who you're being internally, the mirror has no choice but to eventually show you a different reflection. The key word there is eventually. This is where most people give up. They try to think new thoughts and feel new emotions for a day or two, but when their environment doesn't immediately change, they conclude it's not working and revert back to the old patterns. They let the outer world, which is still reflecting the past, convince them that change isn't possible. But there's a lag time. You're changing your electromagnetic signature, but it takes a while for the quantum field to reorganize the elements of your life to match that new signature. This is where faith comes in. Not blind faith, but faith in the process. Faith that if you maintain the new internal state long enough, consistently enough, the external evidence will eventually have to appear. This brings up an important point about expectation and prediction. In the old Newtonian model of reality, you could predict outcomes based on past patterns. If A plus B always equaled C, then you could know what to expect. But in the quantum model, you can't predict exactly how or when your new reality will manifest. In fact, you shouldn't be able to. If you can predict it, that means it's coming from the old you, the familiar patterns. Real change, real quantum creation should surprise you. It should show up in ways you never could have imagined or forced. This is why surrendering the how, when, and where. Your job is to get clear on what you want and to embody the feeling of already having it. But you must release control over the details of how it manifests. That's the job of the greater intelligence, the quantum field, which has access to infinitely more information and possibilities than your conscious mind does. When you let go of controlling the how and instead focus on becoming the person who already has that fulfilling career, thinking like they think, feeling like they feel, acting like they act, you open yourself up to possibilities you never could have planned. Opportunities appear that seem like synchronicities or coincidences. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. That's the quantum field responding to your new electromagnetic signature. Now you may think, this all sounds great in theory, but I still have to go to the job I don't like tomorrow. I still have to interact with difficult people. I still have to deal with my challenging circumstances. How do I actually overcome my environment when I'm still in it every day? And that's the real work. This isn't about escaping your life or denying your current reality. It's about changing your relationship to it. Here's what that looks like practically. First, you recognize that the environment is going to trigger you. That difficult coworker is still going to say things that used to make you reactive. Your financial situation is still going to present challenges. Your body might still have symptoms you're working to heal. The environment hasn't changed yet, but you're preparing yourself internally not to respond in the same old ways. Second, you create a daily practice where you mentally rehearse your new responses. Before you step into your day, you spend time in meditation or quiet contemplation, where you imagine encountering those familiar triggers but responding differently. You see yourself maintaining your center, choosing a new thought, feeling a new emotion. You're essentially practicing the new you before the old environment can activate the old you. Third, when you're in your environment and you notice yourself starting to fall into old patterns, you have a moment of choice. This is where consciousness comes in. Most people are so unconscious, so automatic in their responses, that by the time they realize they're reactive, they've already been reactive for 5 minutes. But as you practice this work, you develop the ability to catch yourself earlier. You notice the first stirrings of the old emotion, the first familiar thought, and you redirect. This is the practice of becoming greater than your environment. It's not a one-time decision, it's a moment-by-moment choice to not let the outer world determine your inner state. And yes, it's challenging, especially at first. Your body is going to rebel. Your mind is going to offer you 1,000 reasons why you should just react the way you always have. But every time you choose differently, you're weakening the old networks and strengthening the new ones. The greatest habit you must break is the habit of being yourself. And your environment is constantly trying to remind you to be that old self. Every person, place, and thing in your familiar world is like a post-it note saying, "Remember, this is who you are. This is how you think. This is how you feel. This is what you do." To change, you have to stop reading those post-it notes. You have to stop letting your environment define you. Your environment doesn't have to control you. In fact, the moment you realize it's been controlling you, you've already begun to break free. Because consciousness, awareness, is the first step. You can't change what you don't recognize, but now you recognize that every time you react the same way to the same environmental cues, you're choosing to be the same person. And if you can choose that, you can choose differently. Chapter 3. Overcoming your body. Every time you have a thought, your brain releases specific chemicals. These chemicals travel through your bloodstream to your body, and when they arrive, your body responds. If you think an angry thought, your brain releases the chemicals of anger, and within seconds, your body feels angry. If you think a fearful thought, the chemicals of fear flood your system, and your body tightens. Your heart races, your stomach clenches. Once your body feels that emotion, it sends a signal back up to your brain saying, "Hey, I'm feeling angry right now." And your brain, monitoring this feedback, starts generating more thoughts that match that feeling. You begin to think angry thoughts because your body is feeling anger. So you start with thinking, creating feeling. But very quickly it becomes feeling, creating thinking. You get caught in a loop, thinking and feeling and thinking, round and round. This is your state of being. It's when your thoughts and feelings merge into one unified experience. And here's the critical part. If you repeat this loop enough times over enough years, your body literally memorizes the emotion. The feeling becomes so familiar, so automatic, that you don't even need a thought to trigger it anymore. You just wake up feeling that way. Your body has become the mind of that emotion. Think about someone you know who's always anxious. They don't need a reason to feel anxious anymore. They just are anxious. It's not that they're consciously choosing anxious thoughts all day long. Their body has been conditioned to produce anxiety automatically. The cells of their body have become so accustomed to receiving the chemical signals of anxiety that they've actually changed the receptors on their surface to expect those chemicals. The body is literally addicted to anxiety. And this is true for any emotion you've memorized, whether it's guilt, anger, sadness, unworthiness, or fear. By your mid-30s, about 95% of who you are is a set of automatic programs, memorized behaviors, and conditioned emotional reactions. That means 95% of your day, you're running on autopilot. You only appear to be awake and making conscious choices, but really, your body-mind is in control, running the same programs it's been running for years. Let me give you a visceral example of how this works. Imagine you've spent 20 years feeling guilty. Maybe it started with some specific event, some mistake you made or harm you caused. At first, you had to think about that event to feel guilty. But over the years, you've thought about it so many times, felt guilty so many times, that your body has memorized guilt. Your cells are swimming in the chemistry of guilt, and they've adapted to it. They expect it. They need it. Now, you decide you want to change. You read this book. You get inspired and you think, starting today, I'm going to stop feeling guilty. I'm going to be free. So you sit down to meditate, and for a few minutes, everything's fine. But then your body realizes something's wrong. The usual chemicals aren't being produced. The cells that have been getting their regular dose of guilt chemistry are suddenly not getting it. And what do? They panic. Your body starts sending urgent messages to your brain. Something's wrong. We need our guilt chemicals. Make some guilty thoughts. And suddenly, out of nowhere, your mind is flooded with thoughts. You remember every mistake you've ever made. You think about people you've hurt. You feel waves of guilt washing over you, even though nothing in your external environment has changed. This isn't some mysterious force. It's your body literally talking to your brain, trying to get you to produce the chemicals it's addicted to. This is why change feels so hard. It's not just about changing your mind. You're actually going through withdrawal from your own emotional chemistry. Your body doesn't want you to change because it's comfortable with the familiar chemistry. The known is always easier than the unknown, even when the known is miserable. Most people's definition of feeling good isn't actually feeling joyful or peaceful. It's feeling familiar. If you've been depressed for 10 years, depression feels normal. It feels like home. And when you try to be happy, that feels weird, uncomfortable, wrong. Even though objectively, happiness is better than depression, your body rejects it because it's unfamiliar. Now let me explain something crucial about how this conditioning happens, because it will help you understand why it's so powerful. When you're in the midst of an experience, especially an emotionally charged one, your 5 senses are sending information to your brain. You're seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, maybe tasting. All this sensory data gets processed, and your brain creates networks of neurons that reflect the experience. Then it releases chemicals, emotions, and those emotions become the way you remember the experience. This is why emotionally charged events are so deeply imprinted. If someone asks you where you were on your wedding day, you can probably recall it vividly. Why? Because the emotion of that day branded the memory into your brain and body. You remember not just what happened, but how it felt. The emotion is the chemical signature of the experience. But here's the problem. If you keep thinking about that past experience, if you keep remembering it, you keep producing the same chemicals. Your body keeps reliving the emotion of something that happened years ago. And because your body doesn't know the difference between an actual experience and the emotion you're creating by thought alone, it believes the event is happening again right now. So if you had a trauma 10 years ago and you think about it frequently, your body is living in that trauma today. You're physiologically stuck in your past. Your body is being conditioned by a memory. And as long as that's happening, you can't create a new future because your body is anchored in the past. Let me make this even more concrete with an everyday example. You're driving to work and you start thinking about a conflict you had with a coworker last week. As you replay the scene in your mind, your body starts to react. Your jaw tightens, your shoulders tense, your heart rate increases. By the time you arrive at work, you're already angry, already defensive, already primed for conflict. And nothing has actually happened yet today. You've let a memory of the past chemically condition your body, and now your body is controlling your mind. You're going to walk into work and probably create the same type of conflict again, because you're in the same chemical state. The real challenge is that by the time most people are adults, they have memorized so many emotions that their personality is really just a collection of memorized feelings. Who you think you are is actually just how you habitually feel. You're not a genetically doomed angry person or a naturally anxious person. You've just practiced those emotions so much and conditioned your body to them so thoroughly that they feel like your identity. If you memorize these emotions through repetition, you can unmemorize them through different repetition. If the body learned to be the mind through conditioning, you can recondition it. You can break the addiction your body has to certain emotions and teach it a new chemical reality. Remember, 95% of your programming is subconscious. It's running in the background without your conscious awareness. You can't change it by just thinking positive thoughts at the conscious level while your body is still running the old emotional programs subconsciously. That's like trying to change what's showing on your computer screen without accessing the software that's actually running. The meditation practice you'll learn later in this book is specifically designed to help you access that operating system. It's not just about relaxing or thinking happy thoughts. It's about getting into the subconscious mind, recognizing the emotional programs that are running, and literally reprogramming them. You're teaching your body a new emotional vocabulary. But let me be honest with you about what this process feels like. When you start to break your emotional addictions, your body is going to fight back. It's going to send you all kinds of signals, trying to get you to return to the familiar feelings. You might experience physical discomfort, restlessness, anxiety. Your mind might be flooded with thoughts that justify why you should feel the old way. You might suddenly remember every reason you have to be angry or sad or afraid. This is your body trying to maintain control. It's the servant becoming the master. Your body is supposed to serve your conscious mind, but through years of conditioning, it's taken over. And now, when your conscious mind tries to reassert control, the body rebels. It doesn't trust you because you've been absent, running on autopilot for so long. The body has been making all the decisions, and it wants to keep it that way. But here's what you need to know. Every time you recognize that rebellion and choose not to give in, you're weakening the body's control. Every time you notice the urge to fall back into the old emotion and you consciously redirect, you're pruning away the old neural networks and the old chemical conditioning. You're teaching your body that you're back in charge. This is essentially about liberating energy. When you're stuck in memorized emotions, huge amounts of your life force are bound up in maintaining those patterns. Your body is using enormous resources to keep producing the same chemistry, to keep firing the same neural networks. But when you break free from those patterns, all that energy is released. It's like unlocking a dam. Suddenly you have this rush of vital energy that was previously trapped, and you can use it to create something new. People who successfully do this work often describe feeling lighter, more energized, more alive. And it's not just psychological, it's physiological. They've literally freed up energy at the cellular level. They've changed the chemical environment their cells are living in. And when that happens, the cells can function more optimally. This is why people often experience spontaneous healing when they change their emotional state. The body finally has the resources and the chemical environment it needs to repair itself. Your emotions are essentially a record of the past. Every emotion you feel regularly is tied to some past experience or set of experiences. So when you're living by those memorized emotions, you're literally living in the past. Your body is in the past, even though your conscious mind might be trying to think about the future. And here's the quantum truth. You cannot create a new future while living in the past. It's impossible. If your body is chemically stuck in yesterday, if your emotional state is a replay of old experiences, you're going to keep creating more of the same. The signal you're broadcasting into the quantum field is a signal from the past, so you're going to keep attracting and creating past-like experiences. This is why people get stuck in patterns. Why someone keeps attracting the same type of toxic relationship. Why someone keeps sabotaging their success. Why someone keeps getting sick with the same kinds of illnesses. Their bodies are living in the past, chemically and emotionally, so they keep creating variations of the past. But the moment you start to unmemorize those old emotions, the moment you stop conditioning your body to the past, you create space for something new. Your body starts living in the present. And from the present moment, with a body that's no longer anchored to the past, you can actually create a new future. The work ahead of you is to become aware of what emotions you've memorized, to recognize how your body has become addicted to certain feelings, and to consciously break those patterns. You're going to learn to observe the old emotional programs without immediately acting them out. You're going to practice feeling new emotions until they become familiar. And you're going to recondition your body to a new mind. It's not easy work. Your body is going to resist. But remember this, you conditioned your body into these patterns, which means you have the power to condition it into new ones. The body is an incredible learning machine. It learned the old emotions through repetition and chemical conditioning. It can learn new emotions the same way. You just have to be more persistent in training it to the new patterns than you were in allowing it to memorize the old ones. It's not enough to overcome your environment and your body. You also have to stop living in the past and the future and learn to access the eternal present where all change actually happens. But for now, sit with this understanding about your body. Notice how it feels emotions automatically. Notice how certain feelings seem to arise without conscious thought. That's the body-mind at work, and now that you see it, you can begin to change it. Chapter 4. Overcoming Time. We've talked about overcoming your environment and overcoming your body. Now we need to address something even more subtle and perhaps more challenging. You must overcome time itself. And before you think this sounds too abstract or mystical, let me ground this in your everyday experience, because I promise you're trapped in time right now without even realizing it. Here's what I mean. Close your eyes for a moment and notice where your mind goes when you're not deliberately focusing it on something. If you're like most people, your thoughts are either replaying something from your past or rehearsing something for your future. You're thinking about a conversation you had yesterday, or you're worrying about a meeting tomorrow. You're replaying an argument from last week, or you're anxious about a bill that's due next month. Very rarely are you actually present in this exact moment, experiencing what's happening right now. When you're constantly cycling between memories of the past and anticipations of the future, you're never truly here. And if you're never in the present moment, you can't access the quantum field where all possibilities exist. Because the quantum field exists in the eternal now. All potential futures exist right here, in this present moment. But you can't collapse those potentials into reality if you're not present to observe them. When something happens to you, your brain processes it and releases chemicals, and those chemicals create a feeling. That feeling becomes how you remember the experience. So emotions are always records of the past. They're the chemical signatures of things that already happened. When you keep feeling the same emotions over and over, when you've memorized feelings like guilt or anger or sadness, you're constantly living in the past. Your body is chemically recreating past experiences, and when you're living in the past emotionally, you can only think thoughts from the past. Your past literally becomes your future because you keep recreating it. But there's another way people get trapped in time, and it's equally problematic. Some people live almost entirely in the future, but it's a future based on the past. Let me explain what this means. You anticipate something bad happening based on something bad that happened before. You worry about a future event going wrong because similar events went wrong in the past. You're anxious about tomorrow's presentation because you remember the presentation where you messed up 5 years ago. So even though you think you're thinking about the future, you're actually just projecting the past forward. You're using past experiences to predict future outcomes, and in the process, you're creating more of the same. This is living in a predictable future, a future that's really just an extension of your past. Here's a concrete example. Let's say you've been hurt in relationships multiple times. Someone betrayed you, someone left you, someone disappointed you. Those experiences created strong emotions. Hurt, anger, fear of abandonment. Your body memorized those emotions. Now, when you think about future relationships, even though you're thinking about the future, your body is producing the chemistry of past hurt. You're anticipating being hurt again because you were hurt before. And what happens? You either avoid relationships altogether, or you enter them with such guarded, fearful energy that you create the exact outcome you were trying to avoid. Your past becomes your future. You must overcome time. You have to stop living in the past through memorized emotions, and you have to stop living in a predictable future that's just a projection of the past. You have to learn to be fully present, because only in the present moment can you access true possibility. Now, you might be wondering, but don't I need to think about the past to learn from it? And don't I need to think about the future to plan for it? And yes, there's a difference between consciously reflecting on the past for wisdom and being emotionally stuck in the past. There's a difference between consciously creating a vision for your future and anxiously rehearsing worst-case scenarios based on past failures. The key is emotion. When you can look at your past without being emotionally triggered by it, when you can extract the lesson without recreating the chemistry of the experience, then you're free from the past. This is wisdom, a memory without the emotional charge. You remember what happened, you understand what you learned, but you're not reliving it emotionally. That's very different from constantly replaying past hurts and traumas, which keeps your body chemically anchored in that past reality. Similarly, when you envision a future and you feel elevated emotions like joy or gratitude or excitement, you're creating from possibility. But when you think about the future with fear, anxiety, or dread based on past experiences, you're just extending the past forward. You're not really thinking about the future at all. There's a fascinating concept Dispenza discusses: the refractory period of emotions. When you have an emotional reaction to something, those chemicals don't disappear immediately. They have a half-life. They linger in your system. If the emotional reaction is strong enough and the chemicals linger for hours to days, that's called a mood. You're in a mood because the chemistry from an earlier emotional trigger is still affecting you. If that mood lasts for weeks to months, it becomes a temperament. This is when people start describing you by that emotional state. Oh, he's temperamental, or she's moody. The emotional chemistry has become so prolonged that it's now characterizing your personality. And if a temperament lasts for years, it becomes a personality trait. At this point, you and everyone around you identifies you by this emotion. I'm an angry person. I'm an anxious person. I'm a depressed person. The emotion that started as a temporary reaction to a specific event has become who you are. You've memorized it so thoroughly that it's now your identity. When you have a personality trait based on a memorized emotion from the past, you're living in the past all the time. Your identity is rooted in what happened to you years ago. You're not a person living in the present, responding freshly to what's happening now. You're a walking, talking echo of your past, constantly recreating it in your present and projecting it into your future. There's another way people condition their bodies to live outside of time. They anticipate future stressful events so vividly that their bodies start responding as if those events are happening now. You're lying in bed at night and you start thinking about a difficult conversation you need to have tomorrow. As you imagine it, your heart starts racing, your muscles tense, you feel anxious. Your body is responding to something that hasn't happened yet and might never happen the way you're imagining it. But your body doesn't know the difference between an actual experience and one you're intensely imagining. So it's producing all the stress chemicals, preparing for a threat that's not present. You're living in a future moment of stress while you're physically lying safe in your bed. This is incredibly taxing on your system. You're turning on the stress response through thought alone, and you're doing it repeatedly, over and over, conditioning your body to live in a state of constant anticipation of threat. So on one hand, people are living in the past through memorized emotions. On the other hand, they're living in the future through anticipated stress. The one place they're almost never living is in the present moment. And the present moment is the only place where change is possible. It's the only place where the quantum field can respond to you. It's the only place where you have access to true possibility, rather than just variations of what's already been. Now let me explain something beautiful about the present moment from a quantum perspective. In the present, you are literally at the intersection of all possible timelines. Every choice you make right now branches into different potential futures. But you can only see those possibilities. You can only access those different timelines if you're actually present. If you're lost in the past or fixated on a predicted future, you're blind to the new possibilities available right now. The present moment is where your power lives. It's where you can make a different choice. It's where you can think a new thought, feel a new emotion, take a new action. But most people are so rarely present that they miss opportunity after opportunity to actually change direction. Mystics and saints throughout history understood this. They learned to be so present that they could transcend normal space and time. They could access states of consciousness where past, present, and future collapsed into one eternal now. And from that state, they had access to knowledge and abilities that seemed impossible. They weren't bound by linear time the way most people are. Now, you might not be trying to become a mystic or perform miracles, but the principle still applies to everyday change. If you want to create a different future than the one your past predicts, you must become present. You must stop living in the emotions of the past and the anxieties of the predicted future. You must be here, now, with all your consciousness gathered in this moment. This is one of the primary purposes of meditation, which we'll explore in depth later. Meditation trains you to be present. It teaches you to gather your attention, which is usually scattered across past and future, and bring it fully into now. And when you're fully present, when you're not being pulled by the past or pushed by the future, something remarkable happens. You become available for something new. Let me give you a practical example of what it looks like to live in different time zones. Imagine three people facing the same situation. They all need to give a presentation at work next week. Person A spends the week reliving every past presentation that went poorly. They keep thinking about the time they forgot their words, the time someone asked a question they couldn't answer, the time their technology failed. Their body is flooded with the chemistry of those past failures. By the time they get to the actual presentation, they're already defeated. They're so stuck in the past that they can't show up freshly for this new opportunity. Person B spends the week anxiously anticipating everything that could go wrong. They imagine forgetting their words, they worry about tough questions, they visualize technology failures. Their body is living in a future disaster that hasn't happened. By the time they get to the presentation, they're exhausted from a week of stress about an imagined catastrophe. They're so focused on a predicted negative future that they can't be present for what's actually happening. But person C does something different. They prepare appropriately, of course. They review their material, they practice. But then they spend time each day mentally rehearsing success. Not from anxiety, but from a place of presence and possibility. They imagine themselves speaking clearly, engaging the audience, handling questions well. They feel the emotion of success ahead of time. They condition their body to a positive future state. And most importantly, when the actual moment arrives, they're present. They're not lost in past failures or future fears. They're here, now, fully engaged with what's actually happening. They can read the room, adjust in real time, and respond authentically. That's the power of presence. You cannot create a new future while living in the past. It's impossible. If your body is chemically in the past, if your thoughts are recycling old patterns, if your emotions are memorized from previous experiences, you're going to keep creating variations of what you've already experienced. The signal you're sending into the quantum field is a signal from the past, so you're going to keep attracting past-like realities. But the moment you break free from the past emotionally, the moment you stop anticipating a future based on past patterns, you open up space for something genuinely new. You become unpredictable. And in quantum terms, unpredictability is possibility. When you can't predict your future based on your past, that means you've truly changed. You've become someone new, and that new person is going to create a new personal reality. Many people try to manifest or create from a state of lack. They want something because they don't have it. They want to be healthy because they're sick. They want to be wealthy because they're broke. They want to be loved because they're lonely. In every case, they're trying to create from the emotional state of lacking, which is rooted in the past and present. And the quantum field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you're being. If you're being someone who lacks something, you're going to keep creating experiences of lacking. The emotion of lack is your signal, and the field will match it. But if you can generate the feeling of already having what you want, if you can be grateful for something before it manifests, if you can feel abundant before the money arrives, then you're broadcasting a different signal. You're being someone who already has it, and the field must respond by organizing circumstances to match that state of being. This is why you must be feeling the emotion of your desired future in the present moment. You're not waiting for the future to happen so you can feel good. You're feeling good now, ahead of the future event, which tells your body and the field that the future has already happened. You're collapsing time. You're bringing the future into the present through your state of being. Let me give you one more insight about time that might shift your perspective. Linear time, the sense that one moment follows another in a straight line from past to future, is really just a construct of your conscious mind. At the quantum level, all moments exist simultaneously. The past hasn't gone anywhere. It still exists as a field of information. The future isn't somewhere ahead of you. It exists right now as multiple probabilities. It's only your consciousness moving through these moments that creates the illusion of linear time. When you meditate deeply, when you become truly present, you can actually access this timeless state. You lose track of whether 5 minutes or 50 minutes have passed. You're no longer bound by the ticking of the clock. You've entered the eternal now, where past and future collapse into a single present moment. And from that state, you have access to information and possibilities that aren't available when you're locked into linear time. This is how people have spontaneous insights, or sudden healings, or unexpected solutions to problems. They access a state of consciousness that's not bound by linear time, and from that state, they can receive information from what we'd call the past or future. They can see patterns they couldn't see when they were stuck in the sequential moment-to-moment experience of time. So overcoming time doesn't mean you forget the past or ignore the future. It means you stop being emotionally enslaved by the past and stop being anxiously fixated on a predicted future. It means you gather all of your consciousness into this present moment, where you have access to infinite possibility. From here, you can consciously create a future that's not determined by your past. You can respond to life freshly, moment by moment, instead of reacting from old patterns. The meditation practice you'll learn is designed specifically to help you transcend time. You'll learn to let go of the past by unmemorizing the emotions attached to it. You'll learn to stop living in a predictable future by breaking your anxious anticipation of stress. And you'll learn to be so present that you can access the quantum field and all the possibilities it holds. This is the third key to breaking the habit of being yourself. You've learned to become greater than your environment, greater than your body, and now greater than time. When you master all three, when you can be no body, no thing, and no time, you step through the door into the quantum field. You become pure consciousness, and from that state, you can create anything. But it all starts with learning to be here, now, fully present in this moment. Because this moment is all there ever is, and it contains everything you need to create the future you desire. Chapter 5. Survival versus Creation. We've covered a lot of ground. You understand that you're a quantum creator, that your environment has been controlling your thoughts, that your body has memorized emotions and become your mind, and that you're trapped in time, living between past memories and predicted futures. Now we need to understand why all of this is happening. Why is it so hard to break free? Why do you keep falling back into old patterns even when you consciously want to change? The answer comes down to two fundamental states of being: survival and creation. And I can tell you right now, most people spend almost their entire lives in survival mode without even realizing it. Understanding this difference is absolutely crucial because you cannot create a new life while operating from survival. It's impossible. The two states are incompatible at a neurological, chemical, and energetic level. Let me paint you a picture of what survival mode looks like. Imagine an animal in the wild. Let's say a deer grazing peacefully in a meadow. The deer is calm, relaxed, in homeostasis. Everything in its body is balanced and functioning optimally. But then it senses danger. Maybe it hears a twig snap or catches the scent of a predator. Instantly, its sympathetic nervous system activates. This is the fight-or-flight response, and it's one of nature's most elegant survival mechanisms. What happens in that moment? The deer's heart rate spikes, blood rushes to its extremities so it can run. Its adrenal glands dump stress hormones into its bloodstream. Its pupils dilate to take in more visual information. Its digestion shuts down. Who needs to digest food when you're about to be eaten? Every system in its body reorganizes around one single priority: survive this immediate threat. And if the deer escapes, if it successfully runs away from the predator, then after 15 or 20 minutes, its nervous system calms down, the stress hormones dissipate, and it returns to grazing. Balance is restored. This is a perfect short-term survival mechanism. The problem is, human beings can turn on this same stress response just by thought alone. You don't need an actual predator chasing you. You can activate your fight-or-flight system by thinking about your bills, worrying about your job, replaying an argument with your spouse, or imagining a worst-case scenario about your health. Your body responds to these thoughts as if they're real physical threats. And unlike the deer, which returns to homeostasis after the threat passes, you might keep this stress response activated for hours, days, weeks, or even years. When you live in chronic stress, when you keep triggering your survival response over and over again through your thoughts and emotions, something destructive happens. Your body diverts all its energy toward dealing with the perceived external threat. There's no energy left for long-term building projects like growth, repair, and healing. Your immune system becomes compromised because it's not being given the resources it needs. Your digestive system doesn't work properly. Your body starts breaking down instead of building up. But here's what's even more insidious about living in survival mode. When you're in that state, your attention becomes narrowly focused on three things, and three things only: your body, your environment, and time. You become obsessed with these elements because from an evolutionary perspective, they're what matter when you're trying to survive. Where is the threat? How do I protect my body? How much time do I have before the danger reaches me? This is why, when you're stressed, you become a materialist. You become completely identified with the physical realm. You start believing that the outer world is more real than your inner world. You think that changing your external circumstances is the only way to feel better. You look to your environment for solutions. If I just had more money, if I just had a better relationship, if I just had a different job, then I could relax, then I could be happy. But this is backwards. This is the survival mindset keeping you trapped. Because when you're operating from survival, you're living in a state of lack, separation, and fear. You feel separate from source, from the quantum field, from that infinite intelligence. You feel like you're on your own, struggling against the world, trying to control outcomes, because you don't trust that anything larger is supporting you. Now let me explain what happens to your brainwaves when you're in survival mode. Remember from the introduction that we talked about different brainwave states. When you're stressed, when you're in survival, you're typically in high beta brainwaves. Your brain is firing very fast, very chaotically. It's in emergency mode, trying to process multiple threats, anticipate danger, solve problems quickly. High beta is characterized by anxiety, worry, urgency, and that feeling of being overwhelmed. In this state, your brain becomes very compartmentalized. Different regions stop communicating effectively with each other. It's like an orchestra where every musician is playing their own song as loudly as possible with no coordination. The result is incoherence, a scrambled, chaotic signal. And remember, your thoughts and emotions create an electromagnetic signature that you broadcast into the quantum field. When that signature is incoherent, when it's chaotic and scattered, the field receives a mixed message. You're essentially asking for everything and nothing at the same time. Nothing clear can manifest from that state. Moreover, when you're in high beta, in survival mode, your analytical mind is running at full speed. You're thinking, analyzing, worrying, problem-solving, catastrophizing. And here's the critical issue. The analytical mind is the barrier between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. As long as you're stuck in analytical thinking, you cannot access the subconscious, which is where all your programming lives and where real change needs to happen. So survival mode keeps you trapped on multiple levels. It keeps you focused on the external world instead of your internal state. It keeps you in incoherent brainwaves that can't effectively communicate with the quantum field. It keeps your analytical mind active, which blocks access to the subconscious where your habits and conditioning live. And it drains your body's energy for healing and growth because everything is being mobilized to deal with perceived threats. Now let me introduce you to the opposite state. Creation. When you're in creation mode, everything shifts. First and most importantly, you forget about yourself. Think about any time you've been truly creative, truly in the flow. Maybe you were painting, writing, playing music, solving an interesting problem, or deeply engaged in something you love. What happened to your sense of self? It disappeared, didn't it? When you're creating, you're not thinking about your body. You lose awareness of physical sensations. You're not focused on your environment. Your surroundings fade into the background, and you lose track of time. Hours pass like minutes. You become no body, no thing, no time. And in that state, you slip through the door into the quantum field. You access the realm of pure possibility. Dispenza explains this beautifully through the function of the frontal lobe, which is the creative center of your brain. When you're truly focused on creating something, when you're imagining a new possibility, your frontal lobe becomes highly activated. And here's what's magical about it. The frontal lobe has the ability to lower the volume on all the other parts of your brain. It quiets down your sensory centers so you stop being so aware of your body. It quiets your motor centers so you stop needing to move around and do things. It quiets the circuits that process time. Everything gets still and quiet except for this one focused creative thought. When this happens, your brain waves naturally slow down from high beta into alpha or even theta. You move from that chaotic, incoherent state into a calm, coherent state. Your brain becomes like that orchestra where everyone is finally playing the same song in harmony. And this coherent signal is what the quantum field can actually respond to. In the creative state, you also move from being selfish to being selfless. In survival, everything is about you, your safety, your needs, your fears, your problems. The ego is in full control, trying to protect itself, but in creation, the ego dissolves. You're not thinking about yourself at all. You're absorbed in something larger than yourself. And ironically, when you stop thinking about yourself, when you stop being so self-centered, that's when you become most powerful as a creator. Let me give you a concrete example of the difference between these two states. Imagine two people both wanting to heal from the same illness. Person A approaches it from survival mode. They're terrified of the disease. They obsess about their symptoms. They worry constantly about whether they're getting worse. They feel like a victim. They're desperate for a cure. Their body is in a state of stress, which suppresses their immune system. Their thoughts are chaotic and fearful. Their energy is one of lack and desperation. What signal are they broadcasting? Sickness, fear, victimhood, and the quantum field matches that signal. They stay stuck in the illness. Person B approaches it from creation mode. They acknowledge the illness, but they don't identify with it. Instead of obsessing about being sick, they spend time every day imagining and feeling what it's like to be healthy. They mentally rehearse having energy, feeling strong, moving freely. They generate feelings of gratitude for their body's healing capacity. When they meditate, they forget about the sick body and become pure consciousness. They're not desperately trying to control the outcome. They're not checking their symptoms every 5 minutes to see if anything's changed. They trust in a healing intelligence greater than their conscious mind. Their body moves out of stress and into repair mode. Their thoughts are coherent and focused on health. Their energy is one of wholeness and gratitude. And often, something remarkable happens. The body heals in ways that seem miraculous. What's the difference? Person A is creating from survival, from fear, lack, and desperation. Person B is creating from possibility, from trust, wholeness, and elevated emotion. Same illness, completely different state of being, completely different outcome. Now let me explain something about emotions that will help you understand why creation is so much more powerful than survival. Dispenza talks about emotions in terms of frequency. The survival emotions, fear, anger, guilt, shame, unworthiness, are low-frequency emotions. They vibrate slowly, which makes you feel heavy, dense, stuck. They literally make you more matter and less energy. When you're stuck in these emotions, you're grounded in the physical realm. You feel separate from source, disconnected from possibility. But elevated emotions, love, joy, gratitude, freedom, inspiration, are high-frequency emotions. They vibrate faster, which makes you feel light, expansive, unlimited. These emotions make you less matter and more energy. When you're in these states, you feel connected to something greater. You feel like anything is possible. And energetically, you're broadcasting a signal that's much closer to the frequency of pure consciousness, of the quantum field itself. This is why it's important to generate elevated emotions during meditation and throughout your day. It's not just about feeling good, although that's certainly worthwhile. It's about changing your energetic frequency so that you're broadcasting a signal that matches the creative power of the universe rather than the limitation of survival. Let me tell you about someone who embodied this shift from survival to creation. Dispenza shares a story about a man named Bill who had multiple warts on his hand. He'd had them for years, was embarrassed by them, and nothing medical had helped. One night he decided to meditate using a technique similar to what you'll learn in this book. He focused on his breath, expanded his awareness beyond his body, and moved into a state of pure consciousness. He forgot about being Bill with his problems and his warts. He just was. He became no body, no thing, no time. When he woke up the next morning, every single wart had disappeared, completely vanished. No trace of them anywhere. What happened? When Bill moved from survival mode, where he was identified with his body and its problems, into creation mode, where he became pure consciousness. His body naturally reorganized itself to reflect that higher order. The consciousness he accessed, that infinite intelligence, simply restored order to his physical form. The warts, which were a manifestation of disorder, couldn't exist in that coherent field. This is what becomes possible when you operate from creation instead of survival. You stop trying to force outcomes through effort and struggle. You stop being at war with your body, your circumstances, your life. You align yourself with a power that's infinitely greater than your ego, and you allow it to work through you. But here's the challenge. Most people are addicted to survival mode. They're addicted to the stress chemicals their body produces. Think about it. When you're stressed, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol. These are powerful, intense chemicals. They give you a rush of energy. They make you feel alert, focused, alive. It's like a drug. And just like any drug, you can become dependent on it. People become addicted to their problems because their problems give them that chemical hit. They become addicted to drama because drama produces those intense chemicals. They become addicted to worry because worry keeps the stress chemicals flowing. And even though these emotions feel terrible, they feel familiar. They feel like home. Unconsciously, people would rather feel the familiar pain of stress than the unfamiliar feeling of peace. This is why people keep recreating the same problems in their lives. Why they seem to need crisis and chaos. It's not that they consciously want to suffer. It's that their bodies are addicted to the chemistry of survival, and they'll unconsciously create situations that allow them to keep producing those chemicals. The body needs its fix. Breaking free from survival mode, then, isn't just about changing your thoughts. It's about breaking a chemical addiction. It's about teaching your body that it doesn't need stress chemicals to feel alive. It's about finding that aliveness, that sense of being fully engaged with life in the elevated emotions of creation rather than the emergency emotions of survival.